you? How things are going, my brother?
Well, I've been feeling kind of down. I think I needed some rest. I've been pumping 24/7. So the body said I need some rest, David. So it had me feeling a bit down, but I'm bubbling back into
But you're sounding good. You're sounding good. Perhaps
it.
what you need is a sugar charge. You need some fresh fruits.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm gonna get myself some. I love that.
So how's the week been going? We've had some eventful things take place between the 31st of August and now today is what, the 14th of September.
Yeah.
Apart from our independence, we had the passing of the Queen.
Yeah.
And without going into too much language, we have a different kind of passing taking place in Tobago. I hope it's not a passing. We have Fally and Duke going at each other's throat, and Fally is inviting Duke to bring out a vote of no confidence against him. So I'm saying passing in terms, I'm wondering if there's a passing of their relationship because there's strong language used between the two men.
I tell you, I don't like that at all. I was hoping that,
The marriage lasts.
Yeah, and it would have been going smoothly.
Well, I could think of a certain political leader who is having a smirk. I don't want to say he's laughing, and I don't want to say he's gloating. He's having a smirk.
Yeah.
But all the same, we here today to remember a few things about our history, and to make some postulations as to where historically we're moving to. I could put it in another way and saying, apart from the Queen's passing on the 8th of September, I don't know if it was fortuitously, but our Prime Minister on August 3rd had made an announcement or pronouncement, we may say, where we're going to set up a committee, and a committee was set up to review the repurposing of some historical sites and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps what we could do is first recognize that a historical figure, the Queen Elizabeth II, has passed. Do you remember? I knew in my recall, I could only recall 2 visits to Trinidad. I was viewing the editorial in the newspaper as usual, trying to see what our editors would have penned in relation to her. I understand that her first visit here was 1966. In my recall, I remember 1985 and then 2009. Mm-hmm. Do you remember, I would imagine, do you remember her visit in 66? That was a little outside of my time.
Well, I can't remember really, but when I was a little boy, it didn't matter to me at all.
But was there, being a little boy, was there any set of pageantry in terms of...
How you mean? Yeah. Pageantry galore. When the Queen comes here, man, they roll out everything red. They put everything on a high pedestal. You have to change your way of behaving. You know, a whole lot of pageantry.
Yeah, I remember in 1985, looking on the television, they had, the usual thing that goes when we have important people here. They clean up Port of Spain. They get rid of all the things that in their mind's eye ought not to be highlighted for public viewing when we have official people here.
Yeah.
So they move the street dwellers off the road.
Yeah.
And they Port of Spain got a power wash, if you will put it that way.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, in the midst of all this splendor and the pomp and pageantry, a stray dog, for whatever reason, found himself running through the center of the proceedings.
Yeah.
And it was scampering, and it wasn't any stray dog as in a strong looking stray dog. It was one weak, fragile. I don't know how that dog got through, but I remember that stuck in my mind. And the dog was loud. I say you could make preparation in life for all sorts of eventualities and contingencies, but when something had happened, it happens.
That's right. It's true.
But we're linking not just the passing of the Queen. I think this storyline that we're living in now, since the 3rd of August, when Dr. Rowley indicated that we're going to review and repurpose certain things. A committee was put together of persons. I would imagine that in his view would have been significant contributors, people who would be able to add some editorial and some meaning to the process. So Professor Burton was one of the persons named.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had a few other people named on the committee. Dr. Mackenzie.
Mm-hmm.
There was a huge outcry from the Emancipation Committee, Emancipation Support Committee, saying that they didn't get any representation at all in terms of the formation of the committee, in terms of they having their representative there. But having said all of that, I think we need to clear some things up. When Dr. Rowley put together this committee, I think basically what he is saying is it's a review committee. The committee is there to review and to make a determination as to whether we should repurpose certain historical sites. Mm-hmm. So the persons named on the committee were Professor Burton as the chair, Dr. Eastland Kate Mackenzie, Zaida Rajnath, Chief Ricardo Bajnath Hernandez, and Kobe Sandy. I must admit that there were about two persons here that I have no knowledge of. I don't know what their history is. What was carried in the editorial in the newspaper the day after, two persons in particular, it was suggested, ought to have been included, and this was carried on the newspaper clipping. I'm reading here Newsday, August 10th. Dr. Samaru, Dr. Brinsley Samaru, and Dr. Claudius Fergus. Both of them were very, very vociferous and very loud in pinpointing historically some of the persons who were associated with some of those structures and statues and commemorations. Yeah. That these persons are people with wretched past. And when we say wretched, it wasn't just their view. One of the premier universities in Wales recently looked at Governor Picton, one of the prior governors of Trinidad and Tobago, and they were highlighting that he was responsible historically for some serious human rights abuses in the past. In Trinidad and Tobago in particular, when under Picton's rule, we had a situation where he presided over a number of random executions. 35 slaves were executed, or persons associated with same, during his reign. Yet still we have places in Port of Spain named after him.
That's right.
What is your view, David, in terms of, do you think, and I simply mean, do you think that in examining the repurposing of historical sites, that we should try to replace our history with people who would have achieved post-independence Trinidadians?
I think so. I was always of the opinion that we should not maintain these old English names. You know, all those people, they didn't treat us good, They didn't treat the people of that era good. Yet still you see them on high pedestals. I mean, look at how much noise they were making for the Columbus statue to be removed. And some people would argue and say, well, no, it's part of the history thing. Well, that could stay in the books, if you ask me. Let them read about it, let them hear about it. But we should be promoting local heroes. We should be promoting West Indian heroes. I don't even mind we promoting people like Mandela and stuff, even though he had nothing within his reign to do for Trinidad and Tobago, if you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
We should be doing that. These Picton and these people, they weren't good to the people here. They were masters of the plantocracy. And it seems like everybody just say, well, this, that kind of worship of those fellas, I don't know. It happens up to today. There are some people who will raise serious arguments about why these statues and all these things should stay. We have super local heroes. I think all of them should be replaced. All those streets, rename them. When people want to know about that West Indian history, go in your books. Check out a West Indian history book and you'll find out about these wicked people that passed through here. You know the way people feel about the Queen? I don't know why they just don't forget that, because I mean, she's dead, she's a human being. I had that kind of empathy for people who who pass something. But the kind of things they did to people, especially, I mean, by just changing it, when they realized that the empire was crumbling, they changed it to the Commonwealth. Still no freedom of these people. They're still within that kind of control of nations that are within the Commonwealth. So I don't know. It's time we teach the young people more about our people, Caribbean people by extension.
But there's a stream of thought that we ought not to, like I remember David Rudder used to say, and I mean, I'm not quoting Rudder as the author of the comment, but he repeated that once you have an understanding of your past, then you'll be able to carve and foster a different projection in terms of your future. Mm-hmm. It's not a cliche. I mean, some of the editorial carried in the newspaper is saying that we shouldn't try to remove and replace everything that is associated with our history with something modern. That as a nation to evolve, we should recognize where our past lay and able to draw on the good things of the past and harness the things that we've produced in our subsistence as an independent country since 1962, and build a more cohesive, synergistic product moving forward. In other words, to put it this way, we've had some good recall of historical figures. We've also have situations where we've renamed things in honor of our local people. Mm-hmm. And some of them have come out and say very vociferously that though they've had things named after them, they still struggle to get basic assistance when they need it. Let me use a case in print, David, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm subject to correction. Mm-hmm. I don't think I know everything. Claude Noel.
Yeah.
We named the highway after Claude Noel in Tobago. It's a popular place. You can't be in Tobago and not know the Claude Noel highway.
Right.
But Claude Noel isn't well. It was highlighted and carried in the editorial in the newspaper months ago that he is not in the best of health. He's aging now. I believe he's in his 70s.
Right.
And we all know what his contribution to this country was. I believe he was the first. He won the world's first or the first world title boxing meet in this country, meaning that he held a world title. I remember as a child, I believe it was 1980, watching that live on TV. Mm-hmm. But Noel, if it is what we're reading in the press, in the editorial, he's suffering now. Yeah. He's ailing. Yes, he has a highway named after him, but his life is not living his best life. Hmm. He has a structure named after him, but yet still he's alive. I understand that he has problems with his vision, and we, in our understanding, aren't looking after Mr. Noel in the way that we ought to. Naming a historical site after him, that'd be the least beneficial thing in the current circumstances. I'm not saying that the gesture would not have been appreciated by him. He has not been sick all his life, or the greater third of his life, meaning within the last 20 years or so. Mm-hmm. But I think to tie things together, I have no issue with renaming things after our own people. I have no issue with remembering and recalling people. But I think we should extend the gesture to the extent that during their lifetime, we should also recognize what they've contributed and who they are. I think Brian Lara is the best example of somebody we have extended our love to him, and he has received recognition in his lifetime, and he has done nothing in his well, let me use the word behavior, nothing in his public action or in the public space to make us regret having done the same. Even recently, Rash Otiai's family, the Blackman's family, said it took 20 years for him to be recognized in San Fernando in terms of naming a street after him.
Well, it's the street, stop right there, partner. The street that was named after Rash Otiai is a street you used to call Short Street. I mean, of all the streets they could have named after a great man like Rash Otiai, was that street. There's another street named after the guy who led Hatters to Panorama Greatness and thing. You know, when they do decide to give it to somebody local, there's always some petty thing. Some kind of petty showing, but you cannot say it petty because it is now of national recognition. What I'm saying, they could do better than that. And those people like Claude Noel and thing, they should be seen about them. It just tells you of the kind of people we have as leaders here. You know, I want to put it bluntly so. Because you can't tell me that a guy who brought us onto the world stage by winning a boxing championship or world title, the man is suffering there and nobody's taking him on. What kind of thing is that? I think we had,
Daddy Mark,
yeah, Richard, welcome.
I listened for quite some time to both of you on this matter. Quite interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But the explanation you may get from the government why they can't name something after Claude Noel and help him out with his medical concern is that we are short on resources.
Yeah, Richard, yeah.
What kind of resources, Richard?
Financial resources. Once it comes to the poor man.
Yeah.
Because Claude is still a poor man, but you know, the point you're making, which is so profound, he has helped the world, a big part of the world, to know more about Trinidad and Tobago.
That's right.
You know, time I travel and I ask people actually from us in Trinidad, up to this day they don't know it.
I tell you.
They don't know us up to this day. They don't know Trinidad and Tobago.
I tell you.
I was in Holland the other day. Not one person knows Trinidad and Tobago who I talked to. I was in a convention, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. All the people. So where are you from? Where are you from?
Richard, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Let me give you a nice example. I was in Barcelona in 2009.
Yeah.
And I spent 7 days there. I had some friends in Barcelona. So every night when I come home to the place I was staying in, around the corner, I would go in this little shop. They make us call an evening cafe. And I'm buying the same thing every night because it's the only spicy food in Barcelona that I could find. Mm-hmm. And every time I go in, they're about to close. So they tell me I have half an hour, which is more than enough time for me. Mm-hmm. So I was telling the proprietor of the place when I was leaving that I'm leaving tomorrow. This was after about 9 days. So he finally asked me where I'm from. So I said Trinidad. He said, where? I said Trinidad, the West Indies. He said, the West Indies, Trinidad. He said, Jamaica? I said, not Jamaica, Trinidad. We are very south. We are the most southerly island and we're close to Venezuela. When the proprietor was struggling, a young boy, he looking like about 13, 14 years, mopping the place out, turned and watched the proprietor and said, Brian Lara. Huh. The proprietor is an Asian, as they say in those countries. And he jumped up and he said, Brian Lara, and he was able to put Trinidad and Tobago in the context, or put the country in context with identifying with Brian Lara. So our heroes here, we don't exist but for these people, Richard.
I tell you.
But for Brian Lara and the like.
Listen, let me tell you, but for Bob Marley, the whole Caribbean may have been unknown to the rest of the world. Because let me tell you, all the talk I talk to explain to them Trinidad, and it's only when you say Brian Lara, Dwight York, Penny Commission, Wendy Fitzwilliams, to a lesser degree, Miss World, what's her name?
Wendy Fitzwilliams?
No,
Giselle Laron. She was
Giselle
Laron, yeah.
Yeah. Anytime you go outside of that, we in trouble. Trinidad, there's water. They don't know anything about that. And I'm saying that to say, come on. These are the people who have assisted this country to become known internationally by those who remember us, right? When one of them sick, you should be so happy to show, you know, the gratitude of the state to these people by running to the aid, by running to assist them, by running to help them move forward. But instead of you do that, you leave them there to suffer as a new example to the youngsters.
Yeah.
In other words, don't go into boxing. You might get popular for a little while, but then you may not have money when you get old to take care of yourself and handle your medical issues. You may not even be able to address your medical condition. So boxing is what they're telling the youngsters. It's something not good. It ain't viable. Don't get into that. That's the message you're sending to the children. Instead of you take care of this guy to show youngsters, if you get into boxing, even when you can't box anymore, but you have represented the country, if there's a need that you may have in the future, your country will be there for you.
Yeah.
Now tell me something. Those are the people who represent other countries. Diego Maradona, the Argentina, their government, under all the pressure they're under, and how badly the dollar is performing now in terms of the devaluation of it to the anchor currency of the world, the American dollar. You know, when Diego died, the government was willing to do whatever his family wanted. You understand that? And I'll go as far as to tell you, the life of the government in Argentina might have been hinged on how they responded to Diego's death and the involvement. You saw the movement of people in Argentina for his passing. You saw that?
I could quote some stats. They said he had a very small funeral because of the coronavirus restriction. So only 250,000 people turned up in Buenos Aires.
Yes.
That was his statistic. Only 250,000 people turned up in Buenos Aires.
Yeah. And that's to tell you the impact these people have on other people. And Claude Noel would have had that impact on many people during his era. You understand that?
Yeah.
And to see him ailing now, and you can't assist him. But when
not they can't. They won't. They won't. Not that they can. They can. They can assist him. Because I understand it's glaucoma problems. It's treatable things, you know. It's not to say, well, you know, it's an advanced stage of illness. Things that make him comfortable. He's saying that
and as you are saying, a highway is named after this man in Tobago, not so?
A highway.
And he's living almost like a homeless fella with his ailment. That makes sense?
He was saying that there were certain adaptations to his house that needs to be done because of his limited vision, so he can move around comfortably. But he can't afford the adaptations. He can't afford it. The money it would cost at this age, and he's unemployed. And these basic things aren't even looked after. So it's not to say, well, you know, he's asking for $1 million to go and get treatment, because at age 70 plus, he's just looking to be comfortable at this stage. Some of the issue with his eyes is glaucoma related, I understand. So that is something that you could only do certain levels of care to make it more comfortable. So it's sad to see something like that. Now, having said that, Richard, what is your view in terms of, there has been a storyline, and it's more than a storyline, where they've been saying it was suggested that the Woodford Square be named after our former political leader of the PNM, former father of the nation, but I can't say former father of the nation, the father of the nation, Dr. Eric Williams. Do you think that, given Dr. Williams' connection with Woodford Square, given that he first made his appearances there in 1955, he launched the PNM, the People's National Movement, in 1955 at the square. He went on to be a national figure, and up until his death in 1981, he served this country as prime minister for that period, 1962 all the way to 81. So that's 20 plus years, apart from his contribution prior to that period. Do you think that the repurposing of Woodford Square to and assigning the name Dr. Williams to it, are you a supporter of that? Do you think it's befitting, or do you think another public space should be considered in order to assign his name? And And my thing is this: isn't assigning the name and replacing what Dr. Williams' name and removing the Woodford Square name, is that diminishing Governor Woodford in your eyes?
Well, was Governor Woodford ever viewed as the father of the nation?
No, but he did
Well,
contribute.
right. So my point there is they cannot be compared.
Good.
What Dr. Williams did for this country and the opportunities he allowed non-whites to get that we didn't have before, right? And people like McCandell Dagger and I think we have to be more careful what we associate such a great name with. I will quicker want to wonder, would we be doing justice to such a name to put it on Woodford Square? That is the angle. I have no problem with removing Woodford, but to put Dr. Eric Williams' name there, while it might be something, to good recognition and so on, his family would have to speak on that one. I think that name represents so much more in this country. I mean, you have the Eric Williams Medical Scientist Complex.
Right.
I think that's it, yeah. What else we have under his name?
Well, the university has control over his writings, his publications. So that's a major factor in terms of his intellectual work. People associate him with the politics, but
but that's a different type of recognition. That's a specific segmentation.
Yeah.
Don't you think that the family had anything to do with that?
No, that's a good thing too. He was an intellect. So that's good. In other words, you see his name being associated with the university and the work they do there and that kind of thing. That's brilliant. This is what I said just now. You have to be careful what you apply that name to. You have to make sure what you're applying his name to is something good, decent, just. And the things that will happen where his name is associated with will also be good and decent and just. I don't know what else they do in Woodford Square at other times and so on. If they had to put his name there, they had to separate a budget for that square now.
So keep the square.
Yes, as the cleanest place in this country. And have something there like a library and other things, if you know what I mean. They got to transform that place. Because to just place his name and change it there and leave it so, to me, is a major disrespect to what he has represented and still represents to this country. I mean, there are other leaders we could take and just put a name there, so then politics too. Some may even be present. You just put a name on it and leave it. So after that, whoever you choose, if you better clean the place or not, it's okay. But not Dr. Eric Williams. Not Dr. Eric Williams. It's a very different thing. He stands head and shoulder and body above and beyond all else. By far, no one has come close. I think the closest he has gotten may have been Patrick Manning. We love the Silver Fox too. He was very witty and so on. But I don't know how much further I could look, really. Well,
now that you mentioned that, that's an important point to note. Now, the public listening should bear in mind that the committee put together is a committee put together to review the repurposing of certain statues, monuments, and historical sites. It is not a committee put together simply to change everything. It doesn't mean to say that by the end of the year, the committee is supposed to put the report on the table by the end of December, the 31st of December of this year. They can very well come before Parliament. They can present their report and say, listen, we are suggesting phasing certain things out and giving it priority short, medium, and long term, or maybe short to medium term. So what you say there, Richard, is very valid, because you wouldn't like to rename Woodford Square after the father of the nation, and then it's overrun with grass and street dwellers. There has to be
homeless people too.
Exactly.
And homeless people too. Yeah.
So it means that we have to look after that square in more ways than one. Perhaps we have to consider where the financial support is going to come to ensure that the upgrading and the trimming and pruning of the grass and the maintenance of the place, who is going to finance that? If it falls on the corporation and let us say Mr. Martinez, for whatever stint he's there, and his successors, don't see the need to calculate all the corporation's resources in one area, because you have to consider East Port of Spain and so on, and other parts of the in West Port of Spain. So the funding to do that now should be a special set of funding. It should be a special fund to look after and continuously look after and the upkeep and trimming and pruning of that area, and the general well-being of the place. Do you think it would mean, David? Do you think it would mean that we could perhaps, given that it was once called the University of Woodford Square,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that perhaps seating arrangements should be made available? Because apart from the park benches that are often overridden with, let me put it this way, with bird manure,
Mm-hmm.
there should be a proper seating area for when the public needs to come there, and perhaps if they have public meetings and town meetings and so on.
Mm-hmm.
They should perhaps arrange seating in the area to accommodate.
Well, a lot will be needed to upgrade that Woodford Square. I think they should just rename it the People's Parliament. I think there are a lot of important other structures and physical settings that we can name after the great Eric Williams. You know, even though that was his stomping ground before he became recognized, and you know, that is political what should I say, catapulted into the political
Yeah.
thing, you know. But I think they should just name it the People's Parliament. I really don't like these British people and these different people to hold prominence still. It seems as though we can't let go that. We are independent. We are a republic now. And it seems that we can't let go certain things because of real stupid kind of arguments and reasoning. Get rid of it. Let us be us. Showcase my people.
Right. Let me ask you something else. We can easily recognize that there are persons we have identified Rash OTI.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Blackmon, we recognize him, and he got his just due in that sense. There's been a recent, I don't want to say outcry, but a recent upcall when Nicholas Paul, who recently participated in the Commonwealth Games, he came out of the games with a gold, silver, and bronze medal, and they're already calling for a 23-year-old Nicholas Paul to have something named after him. One person.
No, I think that is too early.
I would think so.
Yeah, if he starts to lose now forever, if he's only losing now, that will be, you know, erased. It won't be deleted, but it will be erased from people's mental until they see somebody riding a bike. I think he has to do more. If I am to call on a cyclist that did human service trying to big, I'll call Roger Gibbon. You know.
Great. And Gibbons hasn't had anything named after him.
No, there are so many people who did great things for Trinidad and Tobago, you know. And I think it's time we come together as a people and understand that we should be showcasing to the world our people. To digress a little bit, you know, I'm the kind of guy who will fight for we music and we culture, right? Now, when you come into the airport, you're hearing foreign music. When you come into the seaport, you're hearing foreign music. Now, how the hell the people who live in those foreign lands are accustomed to that music? They come here and they instead of hearing calypso and pan and so kind of thing, they hear foreign music, and people will give you serious arguments why it should be done and all. Look, why do you think people always, anybody I talk to that travels a lot, and they tell them they're from Trinidad, they want to know Trinidad part of Jamaica. Jamaica has impacted the world to that extent. We can do it too if we just start to promote our people and the greats who have done great things. Let us promote them. It's the only way we can start getting the young people to find out about these people. If you rename all these things, the Colombo statue, move that. You understand? Leave statues like Mahatma Gandhi. In San Fernando, Mahatma Gandhi. There's Marcus of Jamaica, Marcus Garvey. You know, I could understand that because Mahatma Gandhi was a fighter for the poor. He wasn't running no plantocracy and killing slaves and doing people kind of wickedness. He's none of that. So I don't mind we having a Mahatma Gandhi statue or a Marcus Garvey statue. But the rest, all them Abercrombie and Picton, it's time to get rid of that. Let the young people that is growing up know these people or governors in the slave time. And this is how they treated people in Trinidad and Tobago who were slaves, how they treated them, the wicked ways they had. Excuse me, and all of that. And let them remember, just remember that. That was school is for, to teach us about them kind of thing. But let us showcase to them what they should have big respect for.
Right, but
and what makes us us.
I appreciate the direction of your thinking, the line of your thinking. My concern is this also. Sometimes in our effort to replace certain things, and I'm saying that to say this, Adam Smith Square, I understand that they're putting up a structure in what was once green space. Adam Smith Square in the area, that area of Port of Spain has found itself being converted from a recognized open green space to a point where they're actually building a physical structure on the site itself. So yes, they're replacing the Adam Smith Square, but it unless it is that structure carries a certain significance and they're planning to name the structure after someone else. No,
I don't think they should. It should remain the Adam Smith Square.
Right. So apart from repurposing, right? Remember the committee is a committee that is geared towards visiting the repurposing of public sites and also revisiting the names of certain public sites, statues, building structures, etc. So the repurposing aspect could also mean that we convert certain spaces into structures that may carry the name of our national heroes. My question is this: when we examine our green space, and if it is, I may put it this way, let me put it in context. For those of you out there who travels, you would associate certain places when you travel with, certain green spaces with a country. Hyde Park in the UK, Central Park in New York, the Garrison Savannah in Barbados. Are you of the view, David, that the Queen's Park Savannah, ironically would have been named after the recent queen who passed? Are you of the view that
we might have some problems there because the people who control that, difficult to, that's a private property, it just looks like it's a public place, but it's owned by businessmen. It's not like Woodford Square, totally under the government's care, or the Queen's Park Savannah, the Queen's Park Oval. I mean, look at the Savannah. Anytime certain things, people say, okay, they should put up a permanent structure as a showcasing for Carnival. Well, I used to say that. I don't know who else used to say that. Now the grandstand there is permanent already. Leave the other part up and prepare it in a way that when these cruise ships and things come in, people can get a taste of Carnival.
Yeah.
You understand? And when you talk that talk, the amount of talk you'll hear about who owns it and the purpose of it, and the man who owned it, he died so long that they say this cannot be done because of this and because of that. Hogwash. That is ours. Move the Queen name from there.
Well, now that you have mentioned that, maybe I could slip this into the dialogue. In an Express newspaper story carried on September 9th, 1999, the late Terry Joseph, former writer, editor, journalist, he had indicated that Carlos John admitted that he decided on his own, without government consultation, to pave 3 acres of the Queen's Park Savannah.
Yeah.
Right? He went on to say...
Look at the hullabaloo that had, and now they're enjoying it.
Right. This is what I'm saying. And he said that this was done. He had given the okay for 3 acres to be paved in commemoration, in preparation for Independence Day parade of that very year, 1999. Well, not 1999, the year 2000. So he began the paving of 3 acres. I remember we had a big outcry saying that, oh, that is green space. Yeah. But what Carlos John had said, he had said that he didn't want the soldiers, the defense force, and to be marching in mud.
Right.
And, he simply was adapting an area of the savannah that would that is constantly in use for that sort of purpose, meaning that every independence, it will be the beneficiaries of that would be the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Will be able to have these public functions, the Independence Day celebrations, on the very same paved area. It's only 3 acres. We need to bear in mind that the Queen's Park Savannah comprises 219 acres.
Yeah.
So if it is 3 acres of 219 is used for the purpose of repurposing
events and stuff,
particular area, then one may think that we benefited, and the last 22 years having had that area paved, I think we've seen where the benefit lies.
That's right.
So perhaps this committee that's been put together to repurpose certain places and to review certain things. The public, when it's casting an eye on the agenda of the committee, may recognize that historically we've had things to deal with like this in the past. It may not have been called a repurposing committee. Now it's formally put together as a repurposing committee. We've had adaptations. Let me make another reference. In Joan Yule Williams had indicated that, and I want to quote here, I'm taking this out of the Thursday, the 11th of August, 2022 Newsday. It was said that, in relation to the Queen's Park Savannah, a below ground level facility with only entrance and exits visible from the streets. It will have seating capacity of up to 18,000 persons. So this is the vision she had for the Queen's Park Savannah. She was saying that what they were attempting to do, this is back in 2008, this is the projection they had made. The Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, which is UDCOT, they were supposed to be mandated with the responsibility to build a structure at the Queen's Park Savannah that would carry, what could host 18,000 people. The facility would have contained a house for a museum, offices, training rooms, studios, carnival offices, event management rooms, security booths, parking spaces for 3,500 vehicles, a 10-tiered retractable roof provided for all weather conditions to protect patrons. So when we look at repurposing, perhaps what we should bear in mind, or repurposing isn't always about changing a name. It's about looking at where we could improve what we have. I think that is in keeping with some of the sentiments you expressed in relation to the Queen's Park Savannah. The thing is, we have an example of 1999 when it was raised by Carlos John, of 2008 when Joan Yule Williams raised the issue of some sort of construction, and now perhaps this committee should look at how they can in some way partially repurpose a portion of the savannah, if not the very same 3 acres, and try to improve it. So in examining our history, in examining where we are, we need to bear in mind that there are aspects of what we occupy, the spaces we occupy here, that yes, may carry a string and a tie and a nexus to our history, but it's in addition to recognizing our local people. We also need to recognize that there are improvements that need to be made to these recognized sites. So it's just about, yes, you repurpose, yes, you may rename, but you must repurpose and rename with a view to maintaining structures that would stand the test of time. I am not against that sort of vision. The thing is, I hope that this committee put together by the Prime Minister isn't another committee that, when it's grouped together, it provides all the technical understanding and all the knowledge and a huge report, and nothing is done at the end of December. If it is to look at something else, the Queen's Park Savannah, and I'm just touching on this, just to get back to where we were. The Woodford Square was named after a colonial governor, or a governor who ran our affairs, managed the Queen's interests in Trinidad and Tobago. But his contribution, and I guess this is why it is Woodford Square was named after him, his contribution was that he, as far back as 1817, he purchased the area that is Woodford Square from the apart from not Woodford Square, the Queen's Park Savannah. He purchased the area that is the Queen's Park Savannah, that 219 acres, from the Peschier family. The Peschier family was of French origin. That Peschier family came to Trinidad when it is the settler of population was established in 1783. For those of you all who may not know what the settler of population was, the British in and around that time frame, they would have had, or what would have been done is that certain pieces of lands in Trinidad and Tobago was made available to certain families. They came here, they would have set up shop, as we say in Trini language, and those areas would have been occupied. The Peschier family had owned that area that is the Queen's Park Savannah, and Governor Woodford purchased that Queen's Park Savannah. He purchased the Savannah, all 219 acres, from the Peschier family. And in purchasing the acreage, what he did is he brought it into the possession of the colonial authority, and control of that Savannah space remained in the hands of the people of Trinidad and Tobago from ever since. So the Peschier family that was their private land. That land space there was owned strictly by them, and what they've managed to retain is that burial ground in the middle of the Savannah, or thereabout, still belongs to the descendants of the Peschier family. They can bury their dead there. So we recognize Governor Woodford for what he did there in relation to acquiring a piece of land that we in Trinidad and Tobago utilize to this very day. I'm wondering if it is, and I think this is where we need to recognize there are places that perhaps need to be repurposed, names that ought to be revisited. But Woodford may be associated with something good. He may be associated with that area of Trinidad that is so close to our hearts, the Queen's Park Savannah. So perhaps renaming Woodford Square after someone else may not be the most ideal thing to do. We should perhaps continue to recognize him for who he was. What the public may not understand also, when it is Trinidad and Tobago was divided into counties, as we know, St. Patrick, St. George, and all the various counties that we refer to in our history, Governor Woodford was the one who was responsible for dividing Trinidad and Tobago into counties. But there may be some controversy associated with his name also. Not necessarily now, but time made it controversial. The drainage system in Port of Spain, as we know it today, where the underground drains were cast, they were cast as far back as Governor Woodford's time. So some of the flooding we're seeing in Port of Spain would have been flooding associated with the works that Woodford did. But allow me to vindicate his name. Can you imagine that the corporation and the local authorities did not improve our drainage structure from Governor Woodford's time to now? So hence, when these structures that went up in the last 100 years in Port of Spain, those structures were constructed in and around underground and drainage systems created by a previous governor so many years ago. We didn't have the foresight to redo the drains or to rechannel certain things and to deepen and broaden certain water channels. So much so that we build modern structures and old drainage systems. So in as much as we have to thank Woodford for the groundwork he did, literally, in terms of establishing the drainage in Port of Spain, we didn't develop what he produced to the extent that it would not turn around to harm us in modern time. So in looking at repurposing.
Before you move on though to another part, Farid.
Yeah.
I want to touch on the Queen's Park. David had said a little while ago that, and I was just trying to get my mind, I'm still not clear on it. So I want to throw out what I recall to see if it could be corrected so we'll know it properly once and for all. David did say he think, so he wasn't definitive either, and I couldn't assist because I'm not too clear myself. But I do believe the government has the responsibility for the Queen's Park Savannah. But what happened is that it is on the basis of a covenant. So the covenant stated, from what I've heard, I think over the years, what we could and cannot do in relation to the utilization of the ground. So it was given to us with certain conditions. You hear me?
Yeah, I'm listening to you.
Yeah. So I do believe by now, though, if that is accurate, the covenant may last forever. But I do believe, again, just like how David has expressed how he feels about Picton and these people, which there's nothing more for me to add as it relates to how I feel. I would want to think that by now, with our independence and all that kind of thing, we could get to review that position with Queen's Park Savannah. For example, if we're wasting money, you're building a north stand and break it down. We should do that with the grandstand too, you know. Put it up, take it down. Put it up, take it down. Just to comply with the covenant that's no permanent structure. No, I think probably we need to go to court or review that, go through all the words and see the meaning, the first meaning, secondary meaning, and see what we could do to address that situation. That piece of savannah, that piece of land could help Trinidad and Tobago re-tourism in so many other ways. Ain't getting rid of it, you know, but there are some things I feel that could go up on that grounds that will contribute to the culture. For example, Napa should have been built in the savannah. I don't know, people may argue, but Napa might have been better placed somewhere in the savannah. It's so big, right? With nice parking and so on. So as you go around the savannah, you could get a complete 360 view of Napa and what's going on there and so on. Might have looked like a whole big spaceship in the center of this nice big area. You know, that could have been a site for weddings and all, for videos. You might have get international artists wanting to come to do a part of the video there. But Napa as it is, it's so nice, but given the size of the building to drive around it, the land on the outside looks so small. I mean, I think it would have been better placed in the savannah. And I think more can be done. We are somewhat too obedient, or we lack creativity, or we don't research or explore things as much as we should. But I do believe something more should have been done with that ground and still could be done with that ground.
What I read, I'm looking at a book written by the Historic Landmarks of Port of Spain by Michael Anthony. That column and the rubric, the Queen's Park Savannah area, he brought some clarification, and maybe it may help if I read a bit of what is there. It simply indicates that in the later 18th century, the area was a sugar estate known as Paradise and belonged to the Peschier, a French Creole family who had come to Trinidad under the settler population of 1783. So that Queen's Park Savannah was a sugar estate before, and the area, the settler opened up the islands to planters and their slaves from the French islands, and it went on. Well, then just what I said, Governor Woodford purchased the land. Now, when he purchased the land, it was as far back as 1817. Maybe I could correct myself here. It goes on to say that the savannah was officially named the Queen's Park when Queen Victoria ascended the throne, not Elizabeth II. But people were accustomed to native name savannah for a grassy field, and it called it the Queen's Park Savannah. So if it is you're suggesting that, you know, things of the nature you describe could go there, we may have to have that repurpose committee, and the review committee may need to consider, according to you, what are the historical underpinnings of interfering with that sort of space. Some may say that it was originally a sugarcane plantation, Paradise plantation. My understanding is one of the covenants, as you say, is that it is to be used for green space for the enjoyment of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. In as much as you're describing certain things of the nature you describe ought to be there. To us who drive around the savannah, most of the time it just looks like virgin land, unkept savannah fields, football grounds that are undertreated. If wasn't it for COVID, it wouldn't have been all green. That period of lockdown allowed the ground to lie fallow, and we got more green than we would have seen before. There should be a lot of sand. So I take on board what you say, but perhaps we should leave that in the hands of the committee to make a decision as to whether things of what we're describing there are, whether that should
The
be.
committee was given that power to go that far.
Good question.
The committee was given the power to look at historical sites, to look at historical buildings, to look at green spaces, and to make a decision with regard to whether we should repurpose certain things and revisit the historical sites with regard to the renaming. Now, bear in mind, I think a lot of people misunderstand what the terms of engagement is. And again, we don't have a document that we could look at it. We were told that Dr. Rowley made the decision on August 3rd after having consulted his cabinet. But there isn't a document we could look at that I could read from in this moment to say exactly what the terms of the engagement is. So if it is they breach the terms of the engagement, or if it is they don't fulfill their responsibility, we can't hold them to task and say, listen, you all you didn't do your job. Perhaps that's a problem we have here. We hear so many times that committees are put together, but we don't get to see the report, and we don't get to see what the terms of references are. But to answer your question, Richard, it appears that from what we've been told, that falls within their portfolio. It's not just a question of renaming sites, it's about repurposing. And repurposing doesn't mean you're converting green space like they're doing to Adam Smith Square completely into a physical structure. It may mean looking at particular aspects, as David said, and improving it. If it is you and I are wrong, maybe there should be some clarification, some sort of release. Maybe these are the sort of things that ought to be taken on board. The Emancipation Support Committee, they were saying that they weren't given any, and I started by saying that they weren't given any representation on that committee of 5 that was put together. None of the persons there are persons with any, in their view, in the Emancipation Support Committee's view, with any commitment to looking at the historical ills and looking at the ill references that certain names have with our historical sites. The Emancipation Support Committee is saying that we need to revisit some of the names and associate and what their names are associated with, and perhaps incorporate things that are significant with our freedom, with Trinidad and Tobago and our development. Apart from the support committee, they also have the Caribbean Freedom Project. They said that they have an interest and they ought to have had representation on the committee. If I were to look at, David, the 10th of August 2022, the Newsday, one of the articles carried that, and I'm quoting here, the Emancipation Support Committee said that there are tangible reminders of the past glorifying major crimes along with their perpetrators in street names and other symbolic monuments that continuously reinforce colonial values and ideas of white supremacy. So the Emancipation Support Committee and the Caribbean Freedom Project, they have very strong views. They think that certain names are associated with criminality, and certain names are associated with persons who perpetrated great wrongs in this country. So therefore, in renaming historical sites, or in revisiting whether historical sites should be renamed and statues should be replaced, we should consider what associations are made with them. For instance, Tamarind Square and Columbus, the Columbus statue. Columbus was seen as not just a historical figure, but a historical figure who exploited the first peoples. And in that context, he contributed to the decimation of a population in this country that is in its minimal stage now. So should we be remembering him? What are we remembering him as? As somebody who would have created or done a great wrong on our indigenous people, who committed a great wrong, and yet still we commemorate him and remember him in an enlightened way. With that in mind, we perhaps should bear in mind that there are certain names that if it is we had to change it, how would it go down? David, let me ask you this. Edward Beetham, that area of Port of Spain that is the Beetham Gardens and the area that is consummately referred to as Beetham. Are you of the view that area should be renamed?
I think they should be moved out of there and put into somewhere else. They're too close to the dump and all these factories that let off these emissions that can have the people there sick. And where the Queen's Park Savannah and the Queen's Park Oval is concerned, since the Queen died, you've seen a lot of things renamed. His Majesty the King. What are we going to call Queen's Park Savannah now? King's Park Savannah?
Well, the thing is that the Savannah is not named after her. The Savannah is named after Queen Victoria. She would have passed.
One of the English heads.
But I take the spirit of what you're saying. Charles is now no longer Prince of Wales. He's King Charles III. But when we look at the Edward Beetham, I was looking at I googled his name. I was trying to get information because I was struggling in our history books to find his name being mentioned. If I were to mention here that Sir Edward Beetham, he was a British colonial official who was a resident commissioner in Swaziland from 1946 to 1950. But that where he came to prominence or came to the forefront of our consciousness here in the Caribbean is he was the governor of the Windward Islands from 1953 to 1955, and then governor of Trinidad and Tobago from 1955 to 1960. What it means is, and this is where some significance lies, Beetham was the last British colonial governor of Trinidad and Tobago. But if it is we were to, in this revisiting and repurposing of certain places, revisiting names attached to certain areas, I wonder if the descendants of Edward Beetham knows that his name is associated with an area in Trinidad that is considered one of the crime hotspots. So in repurposing places and renaming places, one may wonder whether they may not be happy that his name may soon not be associated with a crime spot. When we think of Governor Beetham, we don't think of Governor Beetham as the last English governor. We think of Beetham in the context of that is a hotspot, that is an area that. So I'm looking at the flip side, right? Don't take what I'm saying in a negative light. I'm saying that sometimes in repurposing, we need to consider that not all the time when we assign and associated a name with a particular area, that it is that area evolved and flourished in a manner that was consistent with the taste or the intention when the area was assigned that name. I'm not saying that we only recognize the Beetham. Don't get me wrong, that we only recognize the Beetham for it being a crime spot. There are good people that came out of that area. I remember it was highlighted several times that you had people who performed very well academically and went on to attend top schools in Trinidad and Tobago associated with that area. But sometimes the overwhelming thing is names are associated with communal effort, and sometimes what is extracted out of that community may not be all the positive things that we want to associate with. But moving from that altogether, is there any place in South Trinidad, David, that they've been looking at in terms of green space that you think that perhaps need revisiting?
Well, I'm not so certain about that. I think South is a lot different to Port of Spain. Mm-hmm. South now we have a highway, Rienzi Curtin Highway, we have the Churchill Roosevelt Highway, Solomon Hochoy Highway, Uriah Butler Highway. The only thing that I have no information on is the Skinner Park. I've tried to get information on the naming of that place from a historical point of view, and I haven't been able to find that at all. But down south, I think is a lot different to Port of Spain, or north. You know.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. I understand the significance of Guaracara Park.
Yeah.
It's connected to our history in some way. But I still don't know where this kind of park name came from.
Yes, we have the Brand Lara Academy. We have a lot of things in South that are named after locals as compared to North. But what I'm asking myself is, are we independent? Are we a real Republican country? Are we? Why can't we make those decisions boldly? You know what I mean? I wouldn't say to hell with them people, but I mean, we should have changed those things since we got independence, so that the young people would have read about it in history and all kind of thing, and we'd have moved on. We'd have been proud to see most of our locals' names. You know?
I remember as a child, in a taxi with my father's youngest brother, who is about 70 now. And a woman in the taxi said she's dropping off in Marine Square. So I turned to my uncle and I asked him, where's Marine Square? I've never heard that before. So he smiled and he tapped on my shoulder. So I knew that meant to stay quiet. I was in the taxi and people were listening. So when we came out of the vehicle, he said that Marine Square was the name of the Independence Square before we acquired the name with our independence. So before they became independent in 1962, from his explanation, I'm subject to correction. From his explanation, he's saying that it was referred to as Independence Square was called Marine Square. Upon independence, the name was changed to Independence Square.
Yes.
So I learned something in that moment that Marine Square was. And when I looked at Michael Anthony's book, right? Michael Anthony's book on Port of Spain, he had indicated that the area that we now know as Woodford Square was one Brunswick Square. And it was eventually renamed after Governor Woodford after he demitted office. They felt it fitting to rename something in Port of Spain after him, give him his contribution. So my question is this, and it's perhaps rhetorical. We rename Brunswick Square Woodford Square to remember Governor Woodford. If we change the name to another name now, is it that we think the time has come to forget Woodford? Because
I think those places should be named after local people who had some prominence in our history.
Yeah.
Simple as that. I have two little grandsons there. Sometimes I try the bigger one. He's very bright and smart, and sometimes he will ask me certain things, and I will try to use that historical point or the purview of that kind of history to explain to him. Now imagine in this day and age, in the 21st century, I am to tell him about Woodford and these people. No, I should be explaining.
And the natural resulting effect of that, by telling them about that, is reminding them of some of the wickedness,
yes,
that non-white people were exposed to, which would have the connecting effect of allowing them to see themselves less than white people. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly.
I always have to go back to that point, which is this point. When Moses freed the people from Egypt, didn't the Lord told Moses, take the jewelry and put it around the necks of the children?
Yeah.
And when they asked why is that, so that the children will not grow up seeing themselves as their parents.
That's
who
right.
were slaves.
Yeah.
You understand
exactly.
that?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they wanted the children to be mentally conditioned differently. That's the Lord.
That's
he
right.
made human beings. He has a blueprint for us. He's our manufacturer. He's our creator. But down here, we want to magnify the names of the people who did our ancestors wrong.
Yeah.
So when our children see and they ask, who's this one or who is that one? You don't have to go back into, well, even names are wrong, who held slaves and what they did to slaves. And then say, well, then they'll ask, well, who were slaves?
Yeah.
Who were held or used as slaves?
That's
and
right.
then you had to now tell them about white people who captured non-white people, mainly or all African people, right? and they did this and that and that. What you conditioning the children with now? Two things. You're sowing a seed into their mind right there of inferiority and submissiveness. So when they come into contact with a white person. Why you want to do that to the children of your country?
That's right. Well,
why you want to do that to the human resource of the future of this country? And yet still some people show slavery shows, some foolish shows on TV6, and then they try to cover it, or CNC3 too, and they try to cover it by saying things like, well, you know, it's a history and they show it. They're not showing anybody the history. They're doing that. It could be that. That is part of what they could be doing too, yes. But the next part they're doing, which is worse, is conditioning the youngsters to fall in line with one of the two things I just told you about, or a mixture of both of them. And neither of them is good for this country, and it wouldn't be good for this country if it's not good for those children. So what you're doing, you're trying to set up those children by setting them back.
That's right.
There.
Say it better, bro.
And as you said earlier on, Daddy Mac, those fellas, what they did should be in the books. Who want to see it, let them go and read a book. Families who want to go through that with their own children, get a book and show it to their family.
That's
no problem.
If
white people want to show that to their children, let them too get a book and show it to their children. Let them go and get films and run it in their own cinemas they have in the big mansions. And show it to their children home. That is okay. But don't put that on national television. Or put it in school. Or have streets and parks named after these people as they're glorifying them. You're crazy.
I agree with you, man.
There are people, Richard, I'm not being the devil's advocate here. I share what you say, and I'm on the same page with you in that regard. But I was again looking at some of the historical buildings in Port of Spain and some of the commentary. I could only allude to people who live longer than me. Michael Anthony was saying that remember that church, All Saints Church on Queen's Park West? I believe that would be the church on close to Marley Street in Port of Spain. I was reading where it is said in Mr. Anthony's book. He said that the church is the oldest building on Queen's Park West, Savannah. Its foundation stone was laid as far back as 1844, and the building opened on the 7th of May, 1846. He is highlighting that church has an existence as far back as the 19th century. He goes on to say that originally it was a chapel of ease to the Holy Trinity Cathedral, simply meaning that it was, yes, we have the Holy Trinity Cathedral in Port of Spain on the promenade area there, but that chapel was alternatively used. And he's saying that the building stone from that church was taken from the Laventil Hills. He went on to highlight that the structure's simplest lancet windows and buttresses and so on is an example of the Victorian Gothic Revival church architecture. So some of these buildings that we're looking at, repurposing the buildings, looking at churches, looking at the names, I'm sure that well, let me not say I'm sure. Certain things may be looked at in a very positive way. For instance, the church. So I doubt they would want to interfere with anything associated with churches. But there are some positive characters in our history. He goes on to say that the font in the church was a gift of William Gordon, a wealthy merchant born in Scotland and the owner of Knowsley. And he goes on to highlight that the stone and the marble ornamental screen at the back of the altar was installed in 1923, a gift to the church in memory of Gordon from his widow. So we also have some historical figures. Who would have known of this wealthy merchant from Scotland called Gordon? Ironically, look such a nice gesture was bestowed upon us in the vehicle of this church structure. But before I read this, I don't know if you all could correct me, but before I read this, I didn't know of the existence of this man. So it seemed like we highlighted people in our past and named things after them, but we never. There are people that ought to be highlighted that for their contribution. and it wasn't, they didn't get that kudos. Perhaps this gentleman here, Gordon, he ought to be given that sort of representation. I'm not saying to repurpose a building and name something after him. I'm saying in merely recalling our history, recalling, perhaps putting a commemorative plaque in the yard, recognizing him. I mean, the altar in the back there may be an altar that his widow would have sponsored. But one has to wonder how many people would know that without having the recourse to read about it on a plaque or to read about it in some prominent spot in the churchyard or associated around the building. Having said that, if we can look at, I was looking at an article in the newspaper Monday the 15th of August, and I'm just stepping out of the line of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm making the parallel to make the very same point we're making here. It says that the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, said while there is a tendency to downplay the building of monuments, they are important historical reminders which should be viewed and treated with respect. To put into context what is said there, Holness and Jamaica recently spent $3 million. They didn't say of what currency. I presume if it's $3 million and they didn't highlight US, it wasn't US, it may be 3 million Jamaican dollars. To build a statue in remembrance of Alexander Bustamante, who was the great historical figure who contributed in many ways towards the upliftment of citizens in Jamaica. Universal adult suffrage was granted in 1944, and Bustamante was all part of that project. His party, the JLP, the Jamaica Labour Party, won 22 of the 32 seats in the first general election, and Bustamante remained political leader and national leader and formed the government between 62 and 1967. And Holness was saying that they had financed and commissioned a statue to the value of $3 million in remembrance of him. So even when we look up the Caribbean, and this is my point, when we looked up to the Caribbean, they are spending money, despite the hard times that we all face, in assigning homage, value, naming structures after persons. We have done the same, to our credit. We remembered Sparrow, we remembered Kitchener in Arima. These things came at some cost. I'm not saying that it would have come at that sort of expense, but we've done the same here in so many ways. So in as much as we have to repurpose certain structures, revisit the names of certain places, perhaps we should recognize, apart from Claude Noel, who is, ailing, convalescing at this time, we've had other places named after people here. The deceased Lord Kitchener. I understand Sparrow recently got baptized in New York. He's still alive. He's still with us. I believe he's 86 years of age. So he has gotten his statue. David, who you, in your mind's eye, would stand out, would be key candidates to be remembered?
Well, Tubal the Raya Boss Butler.
Don't we have something in Faizabad, a statue of him?
That's just a what do I call it, a breast of him. Right. That's just a monument right on the junction there. You see, like Woodford Square, that was always a place where people aired their views, anti-government, anti this, anti that. Butler represented that. Let's call it the Butler Square. But there are other people who I know contributed a lot that I mightn't remember them off the bat now.
Yeah.
But they have done so much. I don't know why is that problem. I have no problem with what you're saying there about what they represented at the time. What I'm saying is that we are independent now, and that shows us that there are kinks in the independence thing that shows us as not really independent. You know what I mean? So there are lots of people that you can find in this Trinidad and Tobago who has done so much that we can name these, put up statues and all of that. So people would know. Patrick Manning developed the waterfront. He was attacking the San Fernando area one time. What do we have as Patrick Manning?
I take your point. I take your point. You see, the thing is, I think in the same way that we are engaging each other in this discussion, why don't we have, apart from this committee that has been put together, why can't we get some sort of public consultation going?
Yeah, they don't do that. So you see, like Richard said, sometimes they put this committee in place just to give them people some money. You know, some dollars in their pocket, because nothing comes out of that. Like you said, we don't see reports, we don't see anything. We just hear a committee was put in place, and like it's just a money sharing thing, and nothing happens. Absolutely nothing. You know, so I don't have too much of faith in that kind of thing. I think we are independent. I think our leaders should be talking that talk and leading in that perspective that we are an independent, sovereign country. And we should be going this way to showcase that to the world. Look at Carnival. Carnival, thousands and thousands and thousands of foreigners come here. When they come here, they should be leaving and saying, you know, I saw a statue of Lara, I saw a statue or a building after Butler, and let them learn our history too. You know?
Yeah.
And I think we are shying away from the real facts, and it is showing us that the heads are still controlled by this Commonwealth thing. So although being independent and being a republic, the Commonwealth still holds the reins of countries like ours.
I accept that. But we have had changes in the past that we must recognize. I remember Independence Square North and Independence Square South. I remember reading that it was one King Street North and King Street South. And then upon independence, King Street North and King Street South was changed to Independence Square North and South.
Right? If they can do that, what's the problem in changing the rest? Let people read about that. We should be seeing, we should be proud to know, proud to be Trini. You know?
Yeah. We recently they were pushing and propagating that Kwame Ture, his name be remembered, and they rename Oxford Street after him.
Yeah.
But as to what ground that quest has covered, we don't know.
We don't know. Macandal Dagger. I mean, why leave these people out? You know, because they took on the English trend that these leaders are pushing. That's why we should put them up. And let the young people know that these fellas fought against that sort of English or French or whatever control. We want to be Trini, we want to teach our youths that are coming up about Trinbagonianism. And yet still, you have a set of things all over the place that is not Trini. I have no problem with them getting rid of all. If you want to know about it, read according to Richard. Go in and find some books. That them in books. But they don't have no books that highlighting to the extent there are books. Michael Anthony and all these fellas wrote books. You know what I mean? What's the story? Why we can't do that? Who's holding back this thing? You know, I look at when people turn prime ministers in Trinidad, they have to go to England. I ask myself why. You think you know why, Fareed? Every single one of them. As soon as they become prime minister, you head off, they're going to England. You know why? The Commonwealth control that. You have to go and report that I am the new Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, part of your Commonwealth. I think you should vank all of that away.
Yeah. But we also had the renaming of Queen Street in Port of Spain after Janelle Penny Commission.
Yeah.
So some of the changes have taken place over the years.
Let's continue. Let's do it all. You know?
But at the same time, in as much as I embrace what you say, we need to bear in mind, and the public listening out there needs to understand that this isn't a committee stage. And the committee, unless the members of the committee share some of our views, their report at the end of the year is going to be a report that is received by the parliament. And I would imagine there ought to be some sort of discourse. I don't want to say debate, some sort of discourse taking place, and then decisions made based on the remember, the committee is not they're not mandate. Their mandate is not to change anything. They don't have the power to do it. Their mandate is to examine and
report on.
And report. They could only, and for want of a better word, invoke and inform. They could simply make projections as to what they think should be maintained and what they think should be repurposed and what should be renamed. Hence, the Emancipation Support Committee and its equivalent felt like if they had a purpose on the standing committee, or if they had a voice on the standing committee, they may have been able to do things in a stronger, more purposive way. I don't know if they're saying that they don't have confidence in the persons the Prime Minister appointed to. Well,
they should have been there in the first place. I mean, I give the Emancipation Support Committee some thumbs down to her. I find sometimes all they think about is emancipation. They will get some money. So apparently, these people are the heads. They're just interested in money. But if they had to be real, they should have been represented on that committee. Those people that you call out on this committee, how much of them will be on the ground, so
But this is the thing, Dr. Samaru and Dr. Fergus of the University of the West Indies, they would have been, in my time, my first degree was a history degree. And when I was on campus, when I was in the university in St. Augustine, they were really strong. I sat in the classes where these individuals taught. And they did a great job in highlighting as far back as the 1990s, and I'm sure they did it long before I arrived at university, some of the wrongs that were committed historically upon Trinidad and Tobago. And people with that sort of knowledge and background might have been able to contribute in some other way. I'm not saying that those there cannot. But what they say ought to have been taken on board. I believe that it's not too late. These men are alive, and that's what I'm saying. If there's public consultation, if there's a forum in which their views could be still put on the table, then the committee could bring that into their consideration. But in looking at the sites, just to engage the public a little bit, sometimes we hear and we drive past certain sites in Port of Spain and not know the history that belie it. Do you know the popular Jenny's restaurant in Port of Spain? Surely you would have heard about it, if not briefly dined there at some point in time.
Yeah, I've been there already.
Yeah. I was also reading where, and I want to quote here. This is the Michael Anthony's editorial here. He said that it is now a restaurant and bar, but Jenny's at number 6 Cipriani Boulevard was for over 100 years the hereditary home of the Booz family. And he goes on to explain. So before Jenny's on the Boulevard became what it became in terms of the name, there's a history associated with that property. He's saying that the property was owned by the Booz family, and Carl George Booz came to Trinidad from Germany in 1873, which is the 19th century. And he came in 1873 at the age of 20. And by 1883, he had become prosperous enough to purchase a plot on the newly developing Tranquility lands, formerly one of Port of Spain's richest and earliest sugar estates. So within 10 years, he came at age 20. By the age of 30, he had become prosperous enough to purchase a plot on the newly developing Tranquility lands in Port of Spain. And it goes on to say that Booz then hired George Brown, who had just arrived in Trinidad from Scotland, to work as an architect and builder and to construct his new home on the site. This was the Brown's first project in Trinidad, completed 12 years before he established himself as the island's architect and builder. So, having said that, Jenny's on the Boulevard, what we may know as a popular restaurant, has historical roots and historical significance. It's not only named after one of the popular restaurateurs, but it's the very land space and the very structure. And if I understand correctly, and that's why I'm making the reference, the architect, George Brown, the Scottish architect, he would have, that structure that we see, Jenny's on the Boulevard would have spent some, I would imagine, a sizable sum of money to restore that into the shape and the maintain the construct that it is today. That construct maintains the resemblance to what the original structure is. So you can imagine 1873 to now. That's more than in my calculation, almost more than 150 years of history standing there. We may have drive past that and just see it as a restaurant.
Yeah.
But not recognizing what it is. If I recall correctly, in all credit to the restaurant here, there is commemoration within the establishment and linkages to a past within its structure. There are certain rooms that carries illustrations, paintings, and otherwise things that are reflective of where we're from. So in repurposing and in revisiting these historic sites, perhaps what the committee should do is perhaps put some sort of plaque or commemoration, or perhaps work in collaboration with Jenny's if that isn't done as yet. And in my understanding, there is nothing on the outside of the building, no plaque or anything of the sort that explains what is the history behind the spot. I often wonder why the structure wasn't, when I say it wasn't redone in a more modern architectural sign, until I read what I read in terms of the building structure and in terms of its historical significance. And then I was able to put into context why it is the original structure was preserved and has been preserved in the manner that it has.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Church of Scotland, David? It's the corner of Frederick Street and Knox Street in Port. Right? It is now an empty car park space.
Yes.
That structure there, the Church of Scotland, is an important historical site. This is in our fairly recent history within the last 10 years. What happened is there was a huge outcry when they started to demolish the Church of Scotland, the building structure. The gentleman who purchased the structure said that he bought the spot outright and he's free if he purchased to do as he pleases. And then there were certain protests and they're saying that the Church of Scotland was one of the churches that stood up with the cry against slavery. In other words, they supported the ending of slavery in 1834 and even before that. Right. And they were pushing for and they supported the anti-slavery movement and the ending of the slave trade. So that church, the Church of Scotland, that setting that is now an empty space, that is historically that went 200 years before. There's 200 years of history lying in the soil of that car park.
Right.
And they were saying that when the structure was being pulled down, that they ought to stop. There was an injunction to have it stop. And when they had gotten to the stage where the face of it was still up, there was some sort of legal support that allowed for the preservation, or for at least they holding a hand on completely demolishing it. Until a decision was made, ironically, the front fell. The structure fell, and now what we have there is a space that there isn't a plaque, because I'm not denying it. I park from there from time to time, and when I'm inside there, I walk through there and I say to myself, I remember attending that church years ago. I remember sitting in that church, visiting the church, and if I may put this in a humorous way as I could, my first job in this country was working Ministry of Finance as a tax officer, a tax collector / tax officer.
Yeah.
And one of the first assignments I had was to do a financial audit of the church. I had to go in there and look at their books and records to see that they were complying with the Board of Inland Revenue directions. And I wouldn't talk about what I found and didn't find. But I remember speaking to the pastor there, was Pastor Coombs in those days. He's now deceased. And he walked me through the church and showed me black and white pictures of priests, Protestant priests and so on back in those days. And whose pictures were up on the walls inside of the structure, and those pictures and monuments were commemorating and remembering people from more than 100 years prior to while I was there. And imagine now that is a car park. Not even a plaque in the yard stating that this was once the compound of the Church of Scotland and commemorating what their contribution was and the support that they gave. So, Richard, I see you there.
Yeah, well, I was there though. A colleague of mine
just running back quickly to Dr. Eric Williams. I
Yeah.
missed it. I want to apologize to this wonderful doctor who reminded us. Well, he was reminding me, so I guess I should have said this earlier on, but only now come across it. There's also the Eric Williams Central Bank Auditorium.
Yeah.
That's another one. And in Eastern Credit Union, they also have the Eric Williams Auditorium, where a lot of wonderful things happen there, and the kind of resources they put to upkeep that place very classy and nice. That's what I was saying. Wherever you use Dr. Eric Williams' name, it should be a place that would represent what he stood for in terms of his leadership of this country, his academic accomplishments, and so on. So I want to thank Dr. Muhammad for reminding me of that piece of the information. And there may be one or two other things around the country that escape me now too. But the Central Bank Auditorium is also a place that is well kept. I don't know if you all noticed that. So once you're doing these things, you have to do them in such a way to make sure they are consistent with what he represented. And that's important. But Farid said earlier on that the committee may have had well, I did ask if the committee had the power to do certain things. I think Farid came around to saying at the end, just a few seconds ago, that what I have the power to do, Farid?
They had the power to recommend and to
recommend, yes.
And
not going to change, Farid.
And to
they want
suggest
to recommend. They recommend the Prime Minister will come with the big book and say, this is a book full of recommendations, and you're going to take this to the cabinet.
Yeah.
We are going to study this, and you always hear from us in due course. And that's the end of that.
End of story.
That's the end of that. And people would think that is being brilliant. If it was, then we should not be able to call it out in advance. Where's the brilliance? I mean, come on. So these are disappointing occurrences and developments in our country. We ought to strive for better. We need to, and I believe we're going to get there someday. Perhaps what we are being put through now may be something to help us all become more educated about what we need to do and how we need to do it in the interest of moving our country forward. So I will take it as a lesson, and I'll hope others do the same and stop allowing people to box in a corner to just do one thing, especially around election time. Keep an open mind and do what you think is best as it relates to Trinidad and Tobago whenever you go to do what you have to do, because we've been taken for a ride for far too long, and not only by this administration. We have been taken for rides before, but I think we have reached that time already, and it's been prolonged. So I think it's long past the time when we need to maneuver ourselves away from being ridden as we have been and are still being ridden with old talk, small talk, but nothing meaningful to move this country forward. Simple things, These are what you call low-hanging fruits to fix, for a country, that is an independent, a republic, a sovereign body. And yet still to change 2 or 3 names that are offensive names to the people of Trinidad and Tobago is one set of consultation and talk. And while you're having all the consultation and talking, those who feel hurt by some of what you're seeing every day, they have to stomach it every day as the conversation goes on, to remind them that you are the one under pressure, not those who are fighting to uphold it. Those who are fighting to maintain it, they're under no pressure. They just work there because they feel good about it. And they're leaving it up for conversation that seems to be unending or never-ending conversations. These things have to, you can see this happening in Russia. I mean, we're not there. But you can see this happening in China. Well, I mean, we're not there either. But there are other parts of the world you wouldn't see this happening. It wouldn't happen in Brazil. You wouldn't get it in Argentina, as I said earlier on. And other Singapore, you wouldn't get this there. You wouldn't get this in America if the Americans feel. I mean, they're fighting to keep up the what they call this flag that they've been holding up for the longest while that they're trying to dismantle for some time. So I don't think America is the best, but it's just a flag. I'm talking about buildings and names and that type of thing. And we ought to be able to do better as a people. And we have not moved as far ahead as we should have by now in 2022. And what we are saying to ourselves and to anyone else anywhere in any other part of the world that is paying attention to us, we are also saying to them, and what their takeaway could be from what they are seeing, is that we don't even know what we need to know. And if we know it, we don't know how to fix it. And what a sad group of people we are. Very sad. So we need to do better for ourselves. And that's why we have programs such as this. Fareed, you brought on a topic here today that I think was quite a good one. Very good topic. I think we need to touch on this some more and look into some other matters.
I'm hoping that in as much as we may repurpose and rename stuff, if that indeed goes the full distance, that at least in removing certain names from certain sites, that we don't forget, we could simply put a plaque, something in commemorating those persons whose names are removed and highlighting who they are. So if it is, let us say, Woodford Square is named after someone else, at least a plaque remains in close proximity. Tracing the history of Woodford Square, we could say that it was once Brunswick Square and it was changed from Brunswick after commemorating Governor Woodford, and now it's changed to whoever we change it to. At least we can trace the history. When I travel and I go to the UK, and I remember being in Paris at one time, at least when you read plaques and commemorative stones, they give you a small trace as to where things are, and then it ignites thoughts in your head, where you will now go on the internet and Google these people's names, and you could actually search their history for yourselves. In other words, you don't decimate their names or remove it altogether. At least you recognize that they exist. But in terms of renewal, you recognize there are other people that perhaps should take the forefront and be in the vanguard of name presence. So let's hope that sort of commemoration is there. I recently saw Crazy doing a little video with Calypso Rose in New York. I don't know if you saw it, but without him saying that, it seemed to be convalescing, and he was recognizing her as the person who beat him in 1977 at the March Gras final and became Calypso Queen. Maybe we should look at naming something after Rose, because she's 82 years of age. We have a statue of Sparrow who's 86. But in my recall, I don't know if anything been assigned to her. I know she has been living abroad for some time. I don't think that's a reason to not recognize her. But things like this ought to be done.
Yeah, sure. People like Rose, and I mean this respectfully, first woman who won road match, I think, Daddy Mac is he could correct me.
And the Calypso King in the same, Calypso Monarch in the same year.
The same year, right? She's the only woman who did, no.
You were the first woman. The first woman to win the Monarch.
As a matter of fact, that is what changed. As a matter of fact, is that that's what changed the Calypso King competition to the Calypso Monarch.
Yeah, because a woman won it. And they couldn't call her the Calypso King.
No.
And instead of saying the Calypso Queen, just the Monarch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that made sense. And we had several other females who won it thereafter.
Yeah.
Sansa a couple of times, right? Or three times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we had Karen Ashe or something.
Karen Ashe, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she won it too. She pulled on that 2 million. I think she won the biggest prize. I tell you. Karen, I thought we were friends. I haven't seen you since you won. I just joking.
But there are plenty cultural sites and places where you can put those names. Oh gosh. Why is it such a...
But I'm saying this, I said all of that to say this. People like Calypso Rose, they are wonderful things that you could name after them. I will think in the sphere or area that they performed in.
Mm-hmm.
So like we could get like Napa.
Yeah.
Napa could have been named after Rose,
Yeah.
and give it a whole different name,
Mhm.
of the art form and so on and so. So it could have been, her full name and put what it represents, The same thing NAPA stands for, you detail it out on it, but it will be named after Rose,
Yeah.
So to me, something more like that is meaningful, and it's something that we could, express our, how should I say, satisfaction in terms of the value she brought to us as a people in this country over the years, entertaining us and marketing this country and so on, so that her name lives on, her legacy will continue to move on.
Exactly.
But but so you take those people and you put them in the area that they worked in and they excelled in.
That's
But
right.
then there are other people in the country who went more than just in a field, like Brian Lara, for example,
Mhm.
the Promenade,
Mhm.
and Brian Lara Stadium in
Yoruba.
Peruba. Those things, I mean, so much more could be for Lara writing,
Mhm.
because you saw how people embraced Lara in Australia. You saw how they sold out England. Lara went all the way to Africa to teach people how to bat, and they showed. You saw the media around. I don't know. To me, that was the most impressive piece of footage of all the things I've seen about Brian Lara. Right? He was teaching some youngsters how to bat, and they show you all around the field with journalists, and they were carrying on the discussion about what he was doing. They paid him,
Mhm.
to come and do a little stint there. And to me, if we didn't know what that young man, the greatest batsman, tell me what you want about Sobha's best cricketer, when
Mhm.
it comes to,
Batting.
to holding that bat
Mhm.
and demonstrating the will. One of those balls could kill you,
Of course.
and they have before killed people. If it's not like you just say that, they did. And
Mhm.
he faced people like Brett Lee. You
Yeah.
remember him?
Yeah.
Brett Lee, I mean, come on. I saw a shot where it was in the papers where Brett Lee cut him and his bat in half, where he pulled it back and the bat dropped and the ball between the two. I mean, come on. It was amazing stuff. And to stand up there against a team like England that had such fast bowlers too. It had this African guy was on the team. Can't remember his name now. I don't know if you remember that innings. A stocky guy that when he released that ball, you could hardly see it. It was just like a puff of air. And I remember Lara wasn't seeing good, and Jeff Boycott say, "Now is the time to get him. Take him before he begins to see. If he sees the ball, we'll be in trouble." If you know what I mean. And he went to the side and was dropping some liquid in his eyes. So when he come back to bat, that's what Jeff Boycott was saying. He isn't seeing good right now. And with all of that, Lara stood up there and hit that super fast bowler for one massive six right over his head. After he gave him some terrible deliveries first, trying to bounce him all over as he took the eye drops. The first ball, I'll go back and see it. Lara went forward, and straight back over his head. And that man bowed his head and turned around like, what just happened there? I hear Jeff Boycott now. Well, it may be just a little too late. Should have gotten him sooner.
Yeah.
Maybe chase him later for the rest of the afternoon. So said, so done. And that's what Lara did to them. I mean, those are memorable moments.
Yeah.
So when we honor people like Brian Lara for what they did, the only argument you can have with that is that you should have given them more than just the keys to the city and so on. Because let me tell you, when you go to England, England knows Trinidad and Tobago well, because of whom? And this is a Commonwealth country,
Yeah.
Because of whom? Brian Charles Lara.
Yeah.
Once you talk Brian, or you say Lara, everybody know Trinidad. Yeah, Lara, one time. And these, not only deference should be paid to Lara, but he should be held up in a way where the reverence applied to him must always be readily noticeable. You understand? Because he's a world class, he was a world class and still is person. York is good and he played for a great club, but Lara took on the world of cricket,
Yes.
You go and ask the Australians, as Steve Waugh wrote about him after as captain, he said the most disdainful treatment he has gotten, and he declared Lara the greatest ever, was from Brian Lara. He said he would set a field to great precision and say, I have him. And Lara will penetrate that and, effortlessly you'd see the ball head into the boundary. And then he would say, leave the field like that. Change the direction of the ball. And Lara again, you would see the ball through another gap, effortlessly going to the boundary. Then he said in his writing, he will change the field because of how he stand up and where he is. And he will move one man from here and put him there. And just where he moved the man from, Lara will position himself and place the ball right there. And it gone for four again. He said it was frustrating. He said, listen, if there's one man he used to really rejoice to see headed back to the pavilion, it was Brian Lara, When they got his wicket, they used to hug up and cry, You remember that? Like all of Australia used to tell them, all in win till all get Lara out, Once all get him out, well, all know the outcome of the game. I mean, and that is what he meant and still means by his name and so on. So when you do international things with fellas like Lara and so on, they another fellow who should get some of that, but it's just that, again, the wickedness, Sunil Narayan, to me, arguably the most intriguing and strange spinner. I've been watching cricket for years. He was up there with Shane Warne and this guy from Sri Lanka, long name.
Muralitharan.
Muralitharan. And then you throw inside of there now, our own. But they change the rules, you know that?
Yeah.
They say his hand and his elbow. The man bowling slow, The reason for the hand coming over straight was to make sure you're not pelting the ball. So his ball coming at you between 50 and 65 miles per hour, it can't hurt you. So you go and talk about his elbow, it can't hurt you. So it's a good delivery. They're going and talking about Sunil elbow and all that because they didn't want to give him. He was destroying too many teams. West Indies was on the way back up by virtue of his hands alone, The man will move the ball both sides and then hit the doosra or whatever. Straight on and the hand looked the same. But the ball straight on, and when you think it going to turn left or right, and you leave your pads open in the center, it was a straight on delivery. Just turn around and watch your pad, you're going, And they said, no. He's a magician. This cricket, we don't know magician bowling. You know what I did? They send him, they report him once, they report him twice, they report him a third time, and then they threaten him. If they had to do it again, they said that was it for him. So since then, he tried to put his hand as they say he should put his hand, which they figured out. And once he put his hand the way they wanted him to, now you find people picking up 3 and 5 runs off of him. That's how good he was. Before that was 0, So now, a little last year, a little last there, they minimize his effectiveness. What they should name something after Sunil too. Because, and they should have camps with like Lara and camps with people like Sunil to help move this country back up the road. I carried plenty of the great cricketers we have had in the Caribbean and the 3Ws and so on, and even, the real Gary Sobers. I think Gary Sobers.
Gary Sobers.
Yeah, was reduced, and I want to say accept it loosely. Accept it loosely. That is nothing. Just accept it like it was a loose expression, because we know what Sobers mean, not just to the Caribbean, but to the world of cricket. And I don't see that in the politics. I don't know how that happened. I mean, the guy's a good guy. I think he works good. We like him, some of us. But Gary Sobers, boy, that had to be for one man only, but I could say. And if that is how you view Sobers, you didn't see much in Sobers, did you? You couldn't. But, I mean, what could I say? I know it's 6:09. We delayed the news a little, but I just felt that the topic was such a nice one. Fareed, find a way for us to continue this next week. Some parts of next week. It was a very nice topic, and we need to get back into those buildings where people are suffering in this country. People outside, the next thing they'll start doing is catching bachaks and accumulating them until they feel it could fit them into one burger and eat them. Because That's what you're doing to the poor in this country, and you call that governance, breaking the backs of the people of this country and sending them to eat dirt. Soon you're gonna hear people talking in this country, in certain parts of this country, about mud pies. That's what you want to bring people to in this country, in the world of money, where you had just like an ocean of water, but not a drop to drink. In a windfall, according to Richard Quest, you have people accumulating bachak to eat for breakfast. Listen, before I say the wrong word here today, Farid, have a good day. Daddy Mac, get home safely. Nice to know you have recovered. Farid, come back with this topic next week. You can come with others too. I want us to start with this. I have more to say.
Good.
I would stay on for the news.
Good.
Have a good evening and be safe, Richard.
Yes.
Blessings,
Yes.
David. Take care.
Same to you, Farid.
Power 102 Digital.
Yeah.
We sound like home. Power 102 Digital. Streaming 24/7 on power102fm.com and on the Power 102 Digital app. Power 102 Digital. This is